Hi, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. Today we'll talk, down at the beach, about why you might want to consider buying a little instrument for your car. I'll tell you more in just a moment. One of the things that I have frequently said to clients in initial interviews or interviews down the road is there are always more things that we know than that we can prove. And that's true because intrinsically we know things, we've seen things, but many things that we have seen we have to testify to. And unfortunately, there is something in the law now that has been recognized, they've done studies on it, called the CSI effect. And the CSI effect is a complete byproduct of the show that was on CBS. There was CSI Las Vegas and CSI Miami, and I don't know, there may have been others. I never watch TV anymore, so I couldn't tell you. But the whole shtick with the CSI shows was they had all these neat ways to demonstrate how Joe Blow was guilty of the murder, and it all boils down to science, and they had animations and all kinds of neat stuff to show you how it was that this particular crime was committed. And as a result of that, what jurors, particularly in criminal cases, have come to rely upon is being a little bit entertained by the production of evidence. And they like seeing videos. They like being able to see animations. You may recall, for example, in the Paltrow trial, how powerful that animation was based on the witness testimony that demonstrated sort of how the defense thought the accident may have happened. And again, that's because who doesn't like to be entertained? Who would rather listen to somebody drone on and on about, how something happened as opposed to watching a 3 or 4 minute video that shows exactly how it happened. And so for that reason, if you want to make headway in court, particularly nowadays, you need to have the ability to command technology. One of the things that I think is very important, particularly when you look at the way that trial lawyers in the past have tried cases, they've brought out these big, long pieces of butcher paper on an easel. And when they've examined witnesses, they've written down, blue car, blew through stoplight, um, didn't even recognize that they had hit the other car, kept on going. And they'd write all these points down in bullet fashion. And they did that so that the jury would have something to follow along on. And as opposed to having to remember all of the testimony, they could get the little bullet points. And a lot of times, then later on, when their expert testified, they would mark it as an exhibit so that their bullet point of all those notes, the notes that at that time the jury could not take, were sent back to the jury room um, because the expert relied on them in giving his opinion. Now, that was a pretty effective way of getting information to the jurors before it became apparent that things like PowerPoint and Keynote and other programs would make it much easier to just do that on the fly. And I've actually been in a courtroom where I used PowerPoint on the fly as witness testimony came in to get that information up on a screen in front of the jury. And it worked flawlessly. It was just a great way to get that information to the jury. Now, the reason I point all this out is because most people are never going to be in a trial, an antitrust trial, for example, or um, pick any other major tort, a drug case against Bayer Drug Company. There are very few people who are going to be involved in that kind of case as a plaintiff or a defendant. And as a result of that, you probably don't think on a daily basis about how you would present evidence. But I live in a college town. And when I'm not living in a college town, I live down in Florida. at my house down there at the beach where you have tourists from all over the world. And unfortunately, tourists from all over the world drive like tourists from all over the world. Those little things that are so unimportant to them, like speed limits and red lights, they tend to ignore. And as a result, sometimes there are some truly horrific consequences. Every year down at Panama City, they have a big rally for a bunch of motorcycle riders. And it's long past the time when motorcycle riders were all associated with motorcycle gangs and chains and knives and all that stuff. Most of these people are aging boomers who bought a Harley and want to fit in with the guys, I think. Something I have never had an inspiration to do. But at any rate, these guys would go down there and they'd party all weekend and then they would leave. And one Monday morning, we were driving from our house in Miramar Beach into the Walmart at Destin to pick up some groceries. And we saw a van that had been turned over on its side. And we later came to find out that a motorcyclist had come barreling down Highway 98 and the van pulled out in front of him at a red light. In other words, he had the red light, she had the green light, and he hit the van and knocked it over. And pretty much the last thing to go through his mind was the word Caravan on the side of the Dodge. So you have to be you have to recognize that there are people out there who don't give a hoot about your safety or their safety. And as a result, you need to realize that one day you may be looking at a situation where you have to prove what happened. So a couple of years ago, I was driving in my little red Mini Cooper, and there was a particularly troublesome intersection in Jefferson City that allowed you to turn right without stopping. There was a yield sign there, and you turned into a protected lane. And the theory was that even if you didn't want to turn out of that lane, because that lane then became a turn only lane at the next block, you could merge to your left and avoid having to turn right. Oh my, unfortunately, people often did not get that. And as a result of that, what I routinely did at that particular intersection was when I came up to the intersection, I would look to my left to see whether there was somebody coming from over my shoulder. And then if there wasn't, I would continue on. The car in front of me got to the intersection, and the moment that I turned my head, and I don't think this was coincidental, the moment I turned my head, they slammed on their brakes. Now, there was no reason for them to slam on their brakes. There was nothing coming. The coast was completely clear, but I hit them. And I had no way to show, either in civil court or to my insurance company, that it wasn't my fault because they had brake checked me. They had slammed on their brakes in order to get an accident. They had just purchased the vehicle, and as a result of that, I think the payments had been a little bit more than they'd expected, and they wanted to get that vehicle taken care of. So they chose me and my nice little Mini Cooper to be their ticket to getting a new vehicle. And for a long time, I was really upset about that. But then I realized that, at least in part, the responsibility was mine. I had to get the evidence to show that they were mistaken, or that they were not mistaken. They were just lying. But that's, you can't stop that. You can never stop another person from lying. They take the same oath you do in court, and they swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and they don't. It just happens. I mean, it's happened in every case I have ever handled. Somebody has told a fib. And that's unfortunate, but it is the way that the world works. So I purchased a little Kenwood dash cam from Best Buy. Now, this is not a promotional. Best Buy is not paying me to say that. In fact, there are a lot of other places to buy this than Best Buy. I would suggest Amazon has lots of these, and they're little cameras that plug into your cigarette lighter. They stick to your windshield, and they record things that happened in front of your car. Let me show you why this is so important. Now, I would point out that the volume on that particular clip was muted because I might have made a few comments about that person's general lack of coming from a two-parent family, um, or other things suggesting perhaps that he had performed certain unnatural acts. Anyway, the bottom line is I had to mute the volume because the guy almost hit me. If I had come off of my stoplight a little bit sooner, maybe 2 seconds sooner, if I had been sitting there just waiting to go at the instant the green light turned green, I would have been T-boned. And that would not have been good for me. It wouldn't have been good for the idiot that was driving. And so I had a way to establish that he ran the red light because that's the thing that always happens. They say, well, no, the light was green. I looked up, the light was green. I hit the gas, and next thing I know, this idiot pulled out in front of me. And that's exactly what his story would have been. But this is one of those situations where if it had happened, I would have had proof regarding what had happened. So my suggestion to you is to go out and get one of these and mount them to your vehicles, because we live in a situation where there are a lot more people in this country than there were 2 years ago. A lot of them have never driven a car. Many of them are probably going to be getting cars. Many of them may even be getting licenses. I don't know. But irrespective of that, the likelihood that you would be in an accident, I think, is significantly higher today than it was 2 years ago, just because we have more people in the country and more people on the roads. And if you doubt that, just go downtown anywhere on a Saturday or a Sunday, and I think you'll see that we have a lot more cars out there on the road and a lot more people in them. So that's what I have for you today. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments down below. Like, share, subscribe. Do all those things that all of us YouTubers ask you to do. But of course, I don't ask you to do it until after you've seen the video. Because if you like the video, you should like it and subscribe. And if you don't, you should move on to something else and like and subscribe something you do like. That's just the way the world ought to work. If you have an opportunity today, please try to go out of your way to do something kind for someone. Maybe say a prayer for the guy who was driving and ran through the stoplight. I have, because I suspect his guardian angel is very vastly overworked right now. Thank you for watching. Have a marvelous day. Catch me down here at the beach next time. If you like this video, here are a few others you might try, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a terrific day, guys.